A little of this and a little of that. Little pieces, little pieces, little pieces. A little of this and a little of that. Little pieces, little pieces, little pieces. She made soup. She made
Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Oh, hello.
Gosh, hi, Adam.
We loved it
Want to come join us as we're listening to this beautiful music and introduce yourself in the chat? Welcome. Hi, Nina.
Oh no, it's just
a little of this, a little of that, little pieces, little pieces.
Hi, Karina. Welcome.
A little bit,
a little
a little of this, a little of that, little pieces, little pieces, little pieces. She put little pieces of this and a little of that, a little of this and a little of that, little pieces here and a pinch there, a little of this, and there we are. Little of this and a little of that, a little of
Hey, and everyone, Imagine America. Am I audible?
Yes.
little pieces, little pieces. Mama's soup, little pieces, little pieces, little pieces, little pieces.
What's going on? There she is. Okay, welcome everyone. So good to see you here.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
So good to be seen.
That's
Hello.
for sure.
Oh.
Well, this dinner party has been long cooking. Brainchild of Daphne and Carol and myself, but mostly inspired by Daphne and Carol. And we're so happy to have you here, friends. Vincent, Pauline, Sheila, Melba, and all of you out there who've zoomed in to join us. So good to see you here. This is Emmy, and this is
Hi, Emmy.
We're happy to see you here. My name is Erica, and I'm the faculty director of Imagining America. And along with Daphne and Carol, I'm a co-host of tonight's dinner party. You know, I just love that, that song and that music. And for those of you who've enjoyed it alongside of us, Carol and her friends created this song just for this event. So before we get started, I want to give credit to Carol Bebelle for writing Little Pieces.
Big ups.
So, beautiful song. Also lead vocals by Carol Bebelle and Janet Sula Evans and Joy Clark. Joy also on guitar and Janet on percussion. So thank you for that beautiful song. What a nice way to kick us off. So welcome folks who joined in and zoomed us to Imagining America's collective creative engagement. So Daphne, Carol, and I thought in the IA tradition that in addition to the panels and performances and ideas and creative arts shared in our month-long collective creative engagement to reimagine America and to really call us all to action leading up to the elections, that we ought to break some bread and come together and perhaps have a little bit of joy. We understand that so many people are grieving and struggling and perhaps stressed in these moments in time. So the purpose of this hour together is just to join together, to have some soup. I hope those of you who joined us have made some soup or poured a drink. So feel free to write into the chat your name and maybe what you made as you join us tonight. So the concept of tonight is really storytelling. So Daphne and Carol have invited some friends to join us in sharing some soups that they have made that have special meaning in their lives, in their families, in their cultures, in their communities. And so we're really gonna join together in a sharing of food and of story and of friendship. So we're happy you're here with us tonight. I'm gonna briefly introduce Daphne and Carol and have them welcome their friends as well to the dinner table. Daphne is a longtime family friend. She's a writer, a veteran of the civil rights movement, an educator, a culture broker. She was born in Washington, D.C., and her activism was formed by the anti-war movement and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, otherwise known as SNCC. She eventually moved to Oakland, California, which is where we met, and where her home became a hub of the Black freedom struggles, resistance, and culture making within her home and living room. So we're honored to have you here, Daphne. Carol, welcome. Carol is a newer friend of mine, but a longtime leader in the Imagining America community and network. She's a New Orleans native and co-founder of Ashe Cultural Arts Center and a constant voice and advocate for the influence of culture in creating equity, justice, and compassion in American society. So what an honor to have you here as well, Carol.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Would you two, before we get started on your stories, would you like to introduce your friends and family that you've invited to dine with us?
Sure.
Either of you can start.
Daphne, you can start.
I'd like to introduce my brother, Lowell Vincent Muse. I have 4 of these boys, and I'm the only girl and the oldest. And Vincent is a superb cook, and we have really enjoyed doing meals together. And he was the first person I thought of when you told me we were going to do this. So welcome. I call him Spunky. Welcome, Spunky.
Thank you. And I'm feeling right spunky.
Cool. And then Pauline Vela is a longtime friend that I met through my late husband, David Landis. Pauline and David used to work together around things related to the disability rights movement. And Pauline did something very interesting in the last couple of months. For about 3 months, she went through her extensive cookbook collection and prepared a meal from every cookbook and took photos. So she has this collage of fabulous meals that she's done.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. So I've invited 2 of my, what I would call mother, sister girlfriends. First, Sheila Webb, who I came to know as a colleague and a worker. She was my boss, in fact. And over time that blossomed into a lovely relationship. And she is a master cook. And so I've eaten with her and she with me over many years now. And Melba, I met in the 2nd chapter of my work life, and we became sister friends. And like I said, over time, a mother friend, mother sister girlfriends. And so Sheila is a nurse and is the chief operating officer for a network of clinics here in New Orleans. Melba and I, in our 2nd chapter, used to sit together and dream about what we would do when we weren't civil servants. And all of us, it was 3 of us, all of us wound up doing what we said we would do. And so she's just ended being an entrepreneur. And she has also been a major influence in my life and really opened my palate to other foods. So I've invited both of them because they both are very special to me, and we both have cooking as part of what is a part of our friendship.
Well, welcome all, and we really look forward to your soups and your soup stories. So we're going to just jump in and get started with Daphne and Carol sharing some soup stories. But before we do, I realized the soup that I had already decided to prepare, which is a black bean soup. I won't spill it. She says don't spill it. Actually has a little bit of a connection to both Carol and Daphne. So very briefly, Daphne knows when I was a child in Berkeley in the 70s, we had a lot of potlucks, many of which Daphne either hosted or came to our house or participated in. And one of the people who came to those potlucks was Les Blank. You probably in New Orleans might know who Les Blank is. He's a filmmaker. And Les made this film called Always for Pleasure about Mardi Gras. And my family just loved that film. It was just so lively. We loved the food served and the parades and the festivals. And when I went to Reed College years later in the 80s, I invited Les to show Always for Pleasure at Reed. And he said, you have to serve black bean soup when you're showing this film. And I didn't know how to make black bean soup. I went to this Brazilian restaurant and I loved the feijão that they served at this Brazilian restaurant. It was almost black. And so I went and asked them how they made it, and they didn't give me all their special secret ingredients, but I made up a black bean soup for the showing of the New Orleans film Always for Pleasure at Reed. And I've just been perfecting it ever since. And it's my own strange concoction that I built over the years, but it is a favorite to my family, which is why Emmy and my husband Jose here said you should make your black bean soup. So there you go. That's my soup story. But we're really here to hear yours. So why don't we begin with Daphne? What did you make for tonight,
So,
Daphne?
my soup is called Rootin' for the Roots. And I love root vegetables. And what I did was I roasted rutabaga, turnips, celery root, onions, garlic, shallots, and Kohl-Arenas in honor of Erica Kohl. And Kohl-Arenas is beautiful. It's purple and it has a really nice leaf green to it. It's a green that you can cook. And garlic was what else I added. And I cooked the soup in miso. I love miso as a base for soup and stews. And then I added vegetable broth and I boiled the broth for about 10 minutes and then I reduced it to simmer, and the whole soup simmered for about 5 hours. And tomorrow, after the flavors marry, it'll be even bolder. And I added pepper, sea salt, and sage. I grow sage in my garden. So I added fresh sage leaves to the soup, and the taste of the sage will have a chance to come through even more boldly tomorrow. And for dessert, I made sweet potato, baked sweet potato with a elderberry balsamic drizzle. And ginger.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
And I put ginger in the baked sweet potato. And so that, brought the flavor up of the sweet potato. And it's a simple dessert. And elderberry balsamic vinegar is the bomb. It is fabulous. You can use it as a dressing. You can just, sometimes I just sip it like a little tea. And it's really a wonderful flavor. So this soup was wonderful to make, and it made me think about my family and my heritage. And one of the things that I wanted to show, and I hope you can see, this fork belonged to my great grandmother, after whom I am named. And my father gave me this fork about 50 years ago. And I have held on to that fork. I keep it on an altar. I have a rum altar, and I keep it on that altar with a photograph of my uncle, who was a butler. He was a contract butler at the White House. And my dad was a butler. He did embassies, private homes, clubs, and that kind of thing. And sometimes the cook at these fabulous parties would be drunk, and Daddy had to step in and finish the meal.
Wow. Wow.
Get it together, help the cook get it together. So when we were growing up, we were working class family. We ate very well because rich people did not believe in leftovers. So Daddy would bring home a 25-pound tin of crab meat, blue fin crab. And he could taste something once and create it. So we had Yorkshire pudding, we had lobster Newburg, we had Welsh rarebits, all kinds of things that Black people didn't really eat, but that we loved because he put his own twist to it. And when I turned, I think maybe 12, he fixed me curry for my birthday with every kind of condiment that you could imagine. And he had appropriated of Rothschild champagne. And that was my first taste of champagne. But he had such a deft hand in the kitchen, and Vincent and I have inherited it. And I miss him. I miss his kitchen stories. And he would come to California and he would love to cook. He actually brought a sea turtle all the way across the country once and prepared that turtle in my kitchen. And I was a little appalled, but that turtle was good. That turtle was very good. Wow. And I don't cook I'm not a good baker because I don't measure when I cook. Yeah. So I can bake, but my baking on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say my baking is about a 6. But the food that I prepare, sometimes I have to say it'll hit a 12. And I play music when I cook, and you know, I like the vibrancy of the kitchen. And in my old house in Oakland, I had 30 pieces of art, all related to food, hanging in my kitchen. And I can't hang food art in this kitchen I'm in now because it's laid out very differently.
So Daphne, your background in house looks quiet, but I know you live in an intergenerational household. Do they get to taste your soup today, or do you want to share?
They will. They will. They will. And this is let me. I have to. I don't know if you can see it. Are you able to see the soup?
Maybe lift it a little bit.
Yes, we can see it.
Can you see it now?
Yeah. Can you lift the bowl up and put it
How's that?
A little bit higher? We're getting there, but it's dark.
You can see the bowl, but you probably can't see the soup. Yeah. But oh yes, they will. And then I will, any of the, like the stocks, tomorrow I may just drink some of the stock because sometimes I just like the stock and not the content. And then I have some of the roasted vegetables left over, and I have some friends coming over this weekend. We're going to social distance and have lunch. Nice. And I will fix either another soup using those vegetables, or I'll just serve the vegetables. So I like to make a dish, but figure out 5 different ways to make it work. So like roasting a chicken, making chicken salad, making chicken soup, you know, and quickly on the black bean tip, black beans were a tradition in your family, I think even before you were born, because your dad invited Paulo Freire, the Brazilian educator, to come and give a lecture at Berkeley. And Cynthia Brown and made these black beans that were humming. And Freire said these were magnificent, some of the best he'd ever had. But Cynthia had lived in Brazil and she knew Freire. So that tradition of black beans has been passed on through the generations in your family.
Well, thank you, Daphne. And I guess that's a beautiful reminder and message that some things about us we don't even know, that come from our ancestors and are passed down, that we don't, in an intellectual way, remember, right? They're beautiful. Thank you, Daphne. Carol, what did you cook tonight?
Well, I cooked a vegetable beef soup, and I selected it because that's where my love for soup got started. It's the soup that I've known the longest, because it's the one that my mother perfected. And I think I have this panel to thank, because in preparing this soup, I really attempted to make it like she did, which was with fresh vegetables rather than frozen ones. And I got to tell you, I fell back in love with the turnip root, because I had not been putting turnip root in my my vegetable soups. So anyways, it's a vegetable beef soup, and my mother used to, she had to cook every day of the week, and on Saturdays it was a lightweight day. And so on a lightweight day, she cooked the food that we could just go and get what we wanted when we were hungry. And so if they were hot dogs or hamburgers or red beans or soup. And so often soup was used in that way. But the other way that soup was used in our family was as, for healing purposes. And so if somebody was sick, if they had a cold, or if it was the cold season or the flu season, you could count on soup happening. And interestingly, it was just vegetable soup. Later, like when I was a teenager, we got around the turkey noodle soup. But for the most part, the soup that reigned in the household was vegetable beef soup. And inside of that, I get to finish the stories that go with both Melba and Sheila. So I had to kind of edit myself when I was introducing them. So I don't know, maybe it was 15, 20 years ago, I got the flu and I was home a long time. And Sheila was checking in on me and all of this. And she called one day, and I was really in the doldrums because I just couldn't get myself together. And I told her I felt like a motherless child. And I knew if my mother was around that I'd have some soup and I'd be better by now or whatever. So the next morning, I guess about 8 o'clock in the morning, the doorbell rings, and there stands Sheila. She said, "I can't bring your mother back, sister, but I certainly can bring you some soup." And there was my vegetable soup. And then on Melba's side, as I said, she introduced me to other kinds of soups. We met when I was younger, when I was right out of college. In fact, we were colleagues and co-workers in a city office. And last year, I had a knee surgery. I had a knee replacement. And so she, in her motherly fashion, called to find out what she could do. And I told her soups is what I want. So I got lentil soup and I got split pea soup. And soups have always been, in my experience, in our family, something that was always done as a comfort, as a nurturement. And I find that I have now expanded the soups that I make, and the one pot soup, in the one pot stews even. My mother was more of the person who brought me soup. My grandmother did stews more frequently. And I suspect that this was because money was light, but we had what she called her bum stew, which was essentially seasoned potatoes with whatever kind of meat you could have, sausage or ham pieces or whatever. That was bum stew. And then she had wiener stew, which was a pack of wieners that were cut up in the gravy, with a long gravy, and all of the things that would make a red gravy. So my grandmother kind of gave me the stew thing, and then corn, which I later discovered was corn machu. That's what folks call it, which cream style corn and whole kernel corn, seasoned with bell pepper and onion at least. And then with some kind of meat, usually sausage. Sometimes folks can put seafood in it as well. And so I've just found that these put together dishes, which kind of, they really always, the kids loved these things. And so we never saw them as hard time meals. But in many instances, they were meals that were concocted by folks who wanted to be sure that their families were taken good care of, and that we wouldn't be aware of the fact that the family was struggling. And so today there's always a soup going in my kitchen. So every week or so there's a new. I just finished with split pea, and this time it's going to be vegetable beef. I did a vegetarian pot as well because we have members of the family who are vegetarian now, and so I can share that with them as well. So you just leave the beef out. You got the same vegetable soup. But yeah, that's the prominence that soups have had in my life. And if I go to a restaurant and they don't have anything else that I want, I usually can find a good soup, and I'm real happy. And my experience of eating soup is that it's like a therapy almost, in terms of how it calms you down, and it makes you feel nurtured and cared about.
I love Carol and Daphne, how you're both talking about the base of that soup, right? And there are different family traditions and cultural traditions to that base that can carry and travel for different moments, different occasions. We were talking when we were planning for this event about chicken, right? Chicken broth and chicken fat, and how, Carol, you were talking about using one chicken over the course of
Oh my goodness, yeah, I can relate to that from when I should have said that when Daphne was talking. That's the thing I do now is I'll buy a roasted chicken, and I can make really enough food for the week if I wasn't going to get tired of chicken. But half of the chicken gets made in a chicken salad, and then the other half of the chicken becomes the components to chicken vegetable soup or chicken noodle soup or whatever. And among the two things, I could manage to get through the week, especially if I'm busy and I'm not, like food is really being fuel. When food has to be a little more than fuel, then, you want variety and all of that kind of thing. But when food is being fuel, I never wanted to just be blah. But, but I could roll with chicken soup and a chicken salad.
Beautiful. Well, those of us who are Jewish or part Jewish know the Yiddish word for schmaltz, which is the chicken fat for Jewish immigrants, that the chicken fat can go into almost everything, especially soups, and carry that really fortifying, rich base there. Carol, before we invite other folks to share their stories, did you want to share a picture? I think maybe.
Oh yeah, yeah. People, you can certainly see a picture of the vegetable soup.
Beautiful.
There it
Lovely.
is. There it is. And like I said, it was the experience of fresh vegetables, which I just haven't done in a long time. I modified to frozen vegetables so that I wouldn't give up cooking. And then just became acclimated to it. I've discovered this also with okra. Same thing, that there's just a different quality of what happens when I cook okra that's fresh than when I cook frozen with frozen okra. But this soup was made with the exception of lima beans, which I could not find fresh ones of. It's made with all vegetables that are fresh. And I got to tell you that the soup is just a different taste. And so I'm not going back. I've been, yeah, and it wasn't that much of a further effort. It's like one of those moments when I said, well, you went to frozen vegetables because, you had a lifestyle that was really intense. Well, you don't have that kind of intensity anymore. And so you can afford the additional 30 minutes that it takes to cut up the fresh vegetables. And so I'm doing that.
Beautiful. Yeah, I've gotten spoiled with growing my own tomatoes. And then sometimes when I get a tomato from the store, it just doesn't taste the same.
No, it doesn't. Absolutely doesn't.
Yeah. Daphne, would you like to invite the friends and family you've invited tonight to share in their soup stories?
So Pauline, why don't you tell us about your soup and give us a story?
Well, actually, the soup that I chose to make is, I want to talk more about it in terms of Filipino culture. And so I made, my soup tonight is the tamarind shrimp stew. So sabaw is the Tagalog word for soup and broth in the Philippines. And, there it is. And the soups I grew up with ran the gamut from a simple consommé, which often serves as a palate cleanser, to a more hearty more hearty soups or stew. Historically, Filipinos in their homes of Filipinos, we had one heat source, and it was often an open fire oven type thing, which meant that everything was cooked in one pot. And so, but over the years, they added souring agents to the soup, like, fermented seafood paste, grilled fish, all kinds of meats and vegetables. When you go to a Filipino restaurant or a takeout restaurant, in the Philippines right now, it's known as turo, which means point. You can actually have affordable meals, and it's always served with rice and a side dish, or a cup of broth from a soup pot, which is, again, the soup is poured over the rice. Often this meal, this broth, is likely the only meal that a poor person, which we have many of in the Philippines, will probably have in that day. And so the other thing that I'd like to talk about when it comes to Filipino soup is that, unlike many Asian dishes that are intensely spiced, believe it or not, Filipino food is actually seasoned, or it's very much underspiced. No Filipino dish is seasoned perfectly. No Filipino dish is seasoned perfectly, because what happens is when they deliver the food to your table, they bring you a plate of condiments. And in that condiments, you are then to flavor your food, whether it's soup or any other food. And the condiments are often made up of shrimp paste or anchovy paste, fish sauce, vinegar, chopped up onions and tomatoes, lemons, or what we call calamansi, which is akin to lime. So the soup that I made tonight actually is, the flavors that stand out in the soup for me are, you can see the little chili peppers, and it's got tamarind liquor, which is essentially a tamarind reduction, lemongrass, and a splash of fish sauce. And then for dessert, I actually made what's called bibingka, which is a rice flour-based dessert made of coconut milk and rice flour that you bake in banana leaves, and then you serve it with fresh coconut. So when I grew up, my mother made this soup for me a lot. And so in making it actually for this gathering tonight, it brought back a lot of memories, and very unexpected. There's the bibingka.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I really want to thank Daphne for inviting me in this gathering, because it made me go back to, okay, soup, what kind of soup do I make, and dig deep into, okay, I can make a chowder soup. No, I kind of want to make something else different. So tamarind shrimp soup, it's really very easy to make, very simple ingredients. And yeah, it took me all of like 15 minutes, and that involves all the cutting and everything. Yeah. I'll have it here for you, Ms. Muse, when you come.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it.
We gotta plan a reunion where we can all actually sit down together.
And that would be wonderful. True. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. Well, next year, 4 of us will be here. 5 of us will be here, huh? Is that 3, 4, 5 when Imagining America comes to New Orleans? We're going to be positive thinking about this.
New Orleans, it's a special city for me. It's a very special city. I love New Orleans.
Great.
So my brother Vincent, as I said earlier, is just a marvelous cook and very imaginative, and makes the most incredible sauces. And so what is the soup you're bringing to the table tonight, Spunky?
Well, let me just angle down my camera. This is a coconut lemongrass chicken soup with corn, cilantro, green onions, mushrooms, red and yellow bell peppers. And it's, I really enjoy Thai food, and I had a soup like this a few years ago. and I tried to recreate some of the flavors that I'd had. I really, it's understated to say I enjoy cooking. And for a few years back, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was very advanced. And it was a couple of years in treatment where I couldn't do anything in the kitchen, especially cut vegetables, because I was on blood thinners and they just wouldn't let me play with sharp objects. So I learned how to do a speed soup, a chicken noodle speed soup, 30-minute soup, from raw chicken and vegetables to finished product in 30 minutes. And I cheat. I use some stuff called Better Than Bouillon.
Oh, yeah.
Get it from Costco. It's a concentrated reduction of salt and chicken stock, and throw it in the pot, braise the chicken, braise the vegetables, slam it at high temperature for about 10 minutes, and then let it simmer for 20 more, and boom, it's done. Throw the noodles in it, and you're off to the races. I'm glad I learned how to make that, because our mother loves soups. She's very much into soups now, because it's difficult to choose certain things. She can't go biting on ribs anymore. So soups are right up her alley. So every now and then she'll go, well, Vince, why don't you make me some of that soup? So I know, give me 30 minutes and I'll give you a fresh pot of chicken noodle soup. And if you want to get fancy, give me 35 minutes and I'll make it with rice. But to say that I enjoy cooking and the camaraderie and the stories that people share with each other and the recipes people share is an understatement. I think it's one of the fundamental things in life is to cook, to share that food, to eat and enjoy it, and then look forward to that next meal. It's like looking forward to the next sunrise. And this has been a joy being with you all. It's just a pleasure in the company of great people, great chefs. This is kismet.
Beautiful.
So, as I mentioned earlier, both Sheila and Melba are what I call master cooks. I have enjoyed sitting at their table for years. And they both enjoy having people gather with them. And so I'll ask Sheila to start off, and then Melba can go after her. Sheila.
Okay, hello everybody, and thank you so much, Carol, for extending the invitation to me. It's good to see Melba. I hadn't seen her for a while, and it's good to meet each and every one of you. I've just enjoyed hearing your stories, and Vincent, I could just tell you love to cook. I mean, man, I just could feel it. You know, I feel the vibe, and so thank you. And Pauline, your dish, was very, very interesting. And Daphne, your story as well. So again, it's been interesting hearing from everybody. My soup tonight is a cheese chowder, and I do have a picture of it. And this is a vegetarian soup. It's a chowder, and here in the South, we are not really big fans of chowders, but I've been making this soup for many years, and I started doing it interestingly when I got married. I had this cookbook, and the cookbook had this picture of the soup in the cookbook, and so I just thought it was just really kind of nice. I liked the way it looked. I liked the colorfulness of it, and all, and so. I thought that it would be a nice idea to see if I could make this soup. So I went and bought a special pot to make the soup, and I, put the recipe together. It's not a really hard recipe, and you can make it pretty quickly and all. And amazingly, to me, my soup came out looking exactly like the recipe. So that inspired me. And so it has a milk base to it. It's a cream-based soup. So again, it does have its carbs. It's got corn in it. It's got potatoes in it. It's got onions in it. It is vegetarian. because my mom is a vegetarian, and this is one of the most favorite things in the world that I could do for her, to make a soup. And so she just enjoys it. It's very comforting. The carbs, you know, they do provide that comfort for you during the winter months. I mean, it's warm, it's very filling, and you just feel good when you eat it. So over the years, as I, like Carol, being born here in New Orleans and raised in New Orleans, what we knew as soup, the soup that they always made was a vegetable beef soup. So I was brought up on vegetable beef soup, and we had that during the cold months, and I enjoyed that as well. But after I started to make this soup, I make it as tradition. It's a tradition now, and I've made it over the years, and I make it at Thanksgiving here in New Orleans around the holidays. Everybody fixes gumbo, but most people know that if you're going to come to me for Thanksgiving, I'm going to have this cheesy chowder soup, and I'll save my gumbo for Christmas. Soup for me is it's family. I think that several of you have said that. It reminds me of family. I am from yeah. From a large family. There was 9 of us, and so my mother, had to cook things that would stretch and go, far. And so soup was one of the things that she could prepare, and that it would go far and it would stretch, and there was always a lot of camaraderie around the whole issue of soup. We didn't have soup that often because there were so many of us. Soup for my mom was really a lot of work. So it was really a delicacy when we got it, usually during the winter months, and we enjoyed it. So for my family, we do this, as I indicated, like around Thanksgiving, and we do gumbos around Christmas time. And then in between times, we may have some other variation of soup, some other type of soup and all. But this one is a staple for me. And that's my story on my soup, my cheesy chowder soup.
God, that looks so yummy, and it's vegetarian.
Really looks very good.
Would love the recipe.
Yes, I did send. I sent the recipe, so we have the recipe.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mel. Sheila, Mel.
Okay. Well, I made a vegetarian lentil soup, and it's a soup that I've been making for about, let's see, my oldest daughter is 28, so about 45 years.
Wow.
When I had my kids, yeah, the soup is on there. When I had my kids, I became a vegetarian, and I researched and read a lot and studied about nutrition, and this was one of our favorite soups. So I decided to make it tonight because it's an easy soup, actually. It's quick, and it's nutritious, it's hearty, and it has everything that it needs to have in it. It's lentils, spinach, sweet potatoes, carrots, tomatoes, and then it has the seasonings. It has some cumin, coriander, and turmeric. I never make the soup the exact same way because I don't, like Daphne, I don't usually cook to a recipe anymore. So like I never put sweet potatoes in this soup, but I didn't have potatoes, which I normally do. Irish potatoes, so I use sweet potatoes, and most of the time I use kale rather than spinach. So I can't say it's our favorite soup in the family, but it's always it's nutritious and it's good and it's flavorful. In our family, the go-to soup, and we couldn't have it often, like Sheila and Carol, was gumbo. Everybody loves gumbo, and everybody makes gumbo different. It's not the same. They're all different types of gumbo. But when you cook gumbo, it's not something that you do just for the family who's home. You know, you let people know and they come over and they share it. Like Sheila said, it's usually during a holiday. But I didn't have time to make gumbo today. So I made the vegetarian lentil soup. So who I have with me, I almost forgot to introduce, is my husband, Kenneth.
How you doing?
Hi, Kenneth.
And my granddaughter, Naila, who's...
We saw Naila in the beginning.
Yes, we saw her earlier.
Yeah, she assisted me in getting on Zoom, and I was trying to figure out, we could show the soup, Naila.
You could show.
Yeah, I think.
Camera work, Naila.
There you go. So that's the, and we have some French bread and green salad with the soup because, well, not enough vegetables, right? Yeah. So soup is also mostly a cold weather event. And so it's a little warm right now for me to cook soup. We usually had it if someone was sick in the family or if the weather got in the 30s maybe in New Orleans. So normally I wouldn't cook this soup, but this is what I chose to do. And it's really tasty. It's the best one I've done, I think. The best one.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So
there was those sweet potatoes.
Yeah, you don't taste the potatoes so much, you know, because it absorbs all the seasonings. But there's a different texture to sweet potatoes, and they're better for you. So that's the vegetarian lentil soup.
Well, a secret I was going to share towards the end of the session is that Carol and Daphne have already been talking about collecting recipes and creating a cookbook. So those of you zooming in and joining us might hear from us soon with descriptions on how to make these amazing soups. Thank you all so much.
I was wondering as a follow through, two things. If we could send the recipes to you and you provide them to the Imagining America audience. And the other thing that I was thinking about as we were talking about soups, wouldn't it be wonderful on November 4th to make a victory soup?
Oh my.
And what would be in our victory soup? Everybody would have a different kind of victory soup.
Yeah, that's an idea. That's a good idea.
So, Daphne, you've inspired me. That will be our closer today from everyone who's in, and you will know one main ingredient of a victory soup. So everybody think on that.
Mine will be very orange.
Mine will be blue.
So we wanted to save, at least a few minutes to have a conversation about the power of soup, and beyond that, the power of food and cooking in bringing healing and belonging and even perhaps a little joy and magic. So I welcome Daphne and Carol to join in conversation to kind of close us out today in a conversation and a dialogue about the power of soup and food. And if other folks are inspired by something that Daphne and Carol says, definitely feel free to join in as well.
Well, I think all the stories have really allowed us to see the power of soup. I mean, even in tropical cultures, warm climates, people make soup in Martinique. I had a fabulous soup in Guadeloupe. They make soup, in the summertime. So it's something that I think goes across all kinds of cultures, and there's something so reassuring about it. And people eat soup slowly. It's not, sometimes you get a meal and you're dashing it down, but soup is definitely something you savor and you eat slowly and you eat intentionally. And that first spoon of the warmth of the broth going down into your chest, especially when you haven't been feeling well, and then all of a sudden your chest lights up, and if you eat a hot soup, your brain gets on fire, and it reminds you that you really are alive. And how the magic of soup, how it makes people feel, it can make you feel powerful, because you go to feeling well, and afterwards it's like magic occurs. So I think that in these daunting times, we really have to think about what the sources of our power are in relationship to food, in relationship to healthy food. And you said something earlier, Carol, about, you called it, I forget the term you used, but all the things you needed for a soup, you could buy in a little, they were packaged all together, and they were fresh. What was it called?
They are called soup bunches. That's the way
bunches.
You used to be able to get with all of the fresh vegetables, but it would be small portions of it, so you weren't having to buy everything. Yeah.
And then you used the term called long gravy. I've never heard that term before. What is
it? Means a lot of gravy. It means a lot of gravy.
Oh, so, okay.
Long gravy was one of the ways that they stretched food. And so if you had a dish with pasta or a rice dish, the gravy would be a long gravy, so that the small pieces of meat could go with, everybody would get some, and the gravy would be there, if nothing more, to be able to, and the gravies were always tasty. Oftentimes, that's the thing that you wanted, was the gravy and the rice or the potatoes or whatever it was that you were being served. But it was the magic of what was, parents were like making sure that kids were good, that you never knew that anything was going on. And sometimes those were the dishes that were the favorite ones for the kids, were the ones that were the stretch foods. And I think that, for soups, I think that they really are kind of a love food. I think that people, it just kind of brings you to that place of feeling cared for and feeling important and attended to. And that's almost whether you make it yourself or whether somebody makes it for you. And with food being a requirement for life in a certain way, when you feed yourself, you're saving your life. And when you cook for others, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's the thing that's magical about sitting at a table and eating with others. It's why business is done at the end of the dinner, because there's a way in which people have moved in terms of how they feel about whatever. If they were bothered, that's been settled. Being satiated and nurtured put you in a different frame of mind. And so food is one of the ways that we attend to ourselves and to each other. And we need to, we always need to be mindful of it, that it's not always just fuel.
Yeah.
Sheila.
I was going to.
Oh, go on, Vince.
Going to quickly mention, I have seen many people walk down the street eating a ham sandwich or a hamburger, but I rarely have seen somebody walking down eating soup.
Yeah.
Soup tethers you to a table, to a purpose. And then when you're done, you can go do what you have to do. But you can't walk down the street and eat soup. But you can do a hamburger.
Sheila, would you do me a favor and say gumbo? I love the way you say it. There's something about the way you pronounce gumbo that just, it kind of lit me up. Oh, you're unmuted. I mean, you're muted.
Okay, yeah, gumbo.
Yes.
Gumbo.
Yeah.
I rush when I say it, and there was an ease with which you say it, and I can't wait to come to your table and have your gumbo.
Either one of these gumbos are wonderful. I can testify to those too.
Okay. Well, I feel nourished. I feel satiated. I feel joy. I feel the warmth of everybody that's been a part of this. And I am grateful to be at these tables with you, sipping and slurping our soups.
And like the song, you know, it's like the song just kind of came to me when we started doing this. This is one of the ventures that I'm kind of exploring in terms of my artist self. Is that I think you know, soup is a great metaphor for life. That's what everybody does, is that we take little pieces of the things that we want and things that are given to us, and we are charged with, you know, making a life out of that. And I think that that's what, you know, and I think soup is a great metaphor for that. How it is that there are times that when I'm wanting to make a soup, I just open the refrigerator and see what's there. Yeah. And that determines what's going to be in the soup.
Absolutely.
And I think that it is a quality that we can count on. You know, it's like we become less confident about it. Sometimes, and I'm sure right along through here, people are very uneasy about their capacity to be able to make it through. Yeah. But there are many things that have become great, wonderful, and marvelous things that were made out of little pieces of leftovers and that kind of thing. Whole history is full of those kinds of examples. Gumbo, for example, that gumbo started off being something that was just made out of little pieces of stuff that was left. And now you could spend $100 if you want to intentionally make a pot of gumbo.
Yeah.
If you want to intentionally make a pot of gumbo, you could easily spend $100 doing that. And that's not the way it got started. And so that's one lesson from soups. And I think the other lesson from soups is that putting all these things together, each of them has their own kind of taste and all, but put together they become something bigger and better. And so I think it gives us that lesson too about our interconnectedness and all. So those are my kind of wisdoms on soup.
What a great metaphor, that it makes something bigger and better. And
yeah, and just to piggyback on what you, Carol, just said, and also Daphne not too long ago, I think like no other dish, soup it slows you down. You can't rush through eating soup. First of all, it comes scalding hot, so you can't just, you know, and it really slows you down. And I think we are at a time right now where we have to slow down a lot of things.
Yes.
Give us time to breathe and reflect, and just some pockets and moments of silence. So this was really awesome and a blessing to join you all and make this, you know, I'm all about slowing down.
Beautiful. I'm really looking forward to tasting everybody's victory soup.
So let's close out with maybe going around the circle of our dinner table here. And I invite guests zooming in to write into the chat as well. If you were to have one special magical ingredient for that victory soup Daphne mentioned, election day, if that matters to you, or the most beautiful magical soup you could imagine, what would your one special ingredient be? And I'm just gonna kick us off by saying garlic. I'm a big fan of garlic, and now that I know that I had black bean soup with Paulo Freire, I'll definitely have a little garlic in my Brazilian soup. Thank you for that, Daphne. So maybe we'll go around the circle. Anyone, what's your one special ingredient for your victory soup?
I love bell pepper.
Black hot sauce. Indispensable for flavor.
Lapia mala. Orange liquor.
Blue corn.
Okay.
Okra.
Okra.
Filet.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I want to thank all of you for sharing your beautiful stories, recipes to come, who knows, a cookbook to come. This was really so beautiful and moving. And thank you all who zoomed in for your comments and your own recipes and soups you made in the chat here. We'll share everything back with you. We hope you continue to join us at the Imagining America Collective Creative Engagement. We continue in the soup theme tomorrow with performing our Futures Cookbook session tomorrow. And tomorrow night, we also have the Randy Martin Spirit Award presentation with Arlene Goldberg, Jeff Chang, and Karen Atlas to talk about the importance of reviving the WPA. And we will also announce our new Randy Martin Awardee tomorrow at that session. So do look for the program at iagathering.org and join us tomorrow as well. And really, thank you all. Thank you all so much for joining. We will meet again, maybe in person.
Thank you, Melvin, Sheila.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good dreams, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.